Before we get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that is released by GoCollect. And if you're interested, head over to Reggie Collects here on YouTube. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector and the host of the GoCollect speculation video, and I want to welcome you to another episode. As Steve Harvey says, we've got a good one for you today, and true enough, I think that this is going to be a great episode because there is a little something for everyone in this one. To get things started off, we're going to talk about some books that are actually coming out today. So if you are headed to your local comic shop, you may want to hit the shelves and check out these books that our first blogger has identified. The very first book that our blogger talks about is Ice Cream Man issue number 22. And I have not yet read this book, but I have heard nothing but fantastic things about it. What I do know is that the covers of these books are awesome. They are done in the spirit of Dr. Seuss, and I find that extremely charming. The blogger highlights that because these books are somewhat hard to find, you may want to call ahead or be first in line at your local comic shop to ensure that you get a copy. The next book that the blogger talks about is Spawn issue number 313, and this is the first cover appearance of a character known as Plague. Is that right? Plague? In a pandemic? Yeah, Plague, first cover appearance. The blogger also talks about the black and white cover from Capullo. If you are into Spawn, if you're into pandemics, this is a book that you may want to check out. The very last book that the blogger talks about is a king-size Conan issue number 1. And this is a celebration of Conan's 50th year in comic books. And this is actually an anthology of stories in which different creators have come together to create this 60-page comic. And what's really cool about this is that this book features the very first work by Kevin Eastman for Marvel. And Kevin Eastman and the Turtles are pretty hot right now, so you may want to check this book out. And just in case you did not pick up some books last week, I want to flag at least one for you that our blogger talks about that honestly captured my attention, and I literally want to read this from the blogger's post because I thought it was really awesome. Basically what the blogger says is that according to Preview's World, a slew of killings are taking place in Paris. Killings that no one knows how they are being committed. Art thieves then stumble upon the portraits of victims shown exactly how they died. It appears that the artist who drew the portrait of Dorian Gray is back and has some dark plans for the future of Paris and possibly the world. If you are into like horror, this is a really cool book to pick up, and the book that the blogger talks about is The Picture of Everything Else, issue number 1 from Vault Comics. So if you have a chance, swing by your local comic shop, check out these books, and of course, check out the blog post and the other books that are mentioned down in the description of this video. So Elektra is all the rage right now. She really is. Because of what happened in Daredevil issue number 25, our next blogger is speculating that Elektra keys are about to heat up. Now here's the thing. Elektra is the new Daredevil because Matt Murdock is locked away. And everyone knows that eventually Matt is going to be freed and Elektra is going to go back to being Elektra when Matt assumes his title again as Daredevil. But in the interim, like I said, there's some excitement and potentially some opportunities here. In this blog post, the blogger takes a look at the first appearance, the origin, the death of Elektra, as well as her first title, all in one blog post. This next blog post is an interesting one. And it's interesting because the blogger is extending a challenge to you. The blogger is literally asking you to test your knowledge of great creators and original art, and to put in order a series of original art pages that have recently been sold by some legendary artists, to put them in order of highest sales price to lowest. And if you have a chance, I want to encourage you to check out this blog post and test yourself. I'll be completely honest, I couldn't do it. I cheated. I literally went to the end of the blog post and I looked at the answer because I really did not have a clue. I didn't. But maybe you are a little more knowledgeable than me, and so I want to encourage you to try to check it out. The blogger talks about several different extremely talented creators, including the Buscema brothers, Sal and John. He also talks about Gene Colan and also M.D. Bright. So what's really cool is that with each one of these artists, the blogger takes some time to provide us with a little bit of context as to who these gentlemen are, what some of their famous work was, and then also just gives us a feel for who they were as creators. And so whether you want to test yourself or not, this is a cool blog post to read if you have some interest in original art. As mentioned, the link to this blog post is down in the description. So we've already spoken briefly about Daredevil, well, specifically Elektra, but it was within Daredevil comics, so it still counts. But our next blogger actually takes a really hard look at Daredevil issue number 1, which has seen a dramatic spike in prices. And our blogger does a little bit of an examination as to why that might be the case. And this is actually the second installment that the blogger has done. In the first installment, the blogger basically examined why this book, Daredevil issue number 1, was an undervalued, underappreciated comic. And he literally encouraged people to go out and buy this comic because it represented such a great opportunity. And I believe the blogger followed his own advice. Now fast forward several months, and what we actually see is a sudden and dramatic explosion in prices associated with this very comic. Using the GoCollect sales data and filtering for just the last 8 months, what the blogger identified is that almost all grades of Daredevil number 1 are significantly up in value. The 7.0, for example, has gone up 20%, the 5.5, 30%, the 4.5, 36%, the 3.5, 21%, even a 1.0 has gone up 20%, which again, these are dramatic increases for this comic, or for any comic for that matter. And again, this was a book that was, in many people's opinion, including my own, was woefully undervalued, but appears to be getting some attention right now from people. Our blogger actually takes some time to point out why this might be the case. One of the very first things that the blogger talks about is the fact that the rights associated with Daredevil have reverted back to Marvel from Netflix. And people, I think, are starting to buy into this notion that now that Marvel has these rights, they are going to do something really awesome with the Daredevil character. And we have heard over the last couple of weeks that Charlie Cox, the actor that played Daredevil on the Netflix series, there are rumors that he is actually going to be pulled into the upcoming Spider-Man movie. And this is just one of the rumors that is floating out there, and also just one of the reasons why this comic may be seeing these dramatic and sudden increases in prices. If you have any interest in Daredevil or what is happening with this book, you may want to check out this blog post in its entirety. And I'll tell you, I am personally excited about this because I own a pretty nice copy of Daredevil issue number 1 myself. So in this time of soaring prices and in many ways record-breaking prices for comics and collectibles, it's really awesome when someone takes the time to identify some potential undervalued comics that you can speculate on. And it's really awesome when those undervalued books are associated with great characters and or creators. In the case of this next blog post, our blogger does a pretty good job of highlighting one book from each one of those categories. The very first book that the blogger talks about is one that is associated with a really hot property right now, that being Star Wars. And the specific book is associated with a really awesome character in the form of Yoda. And his cameo appearance was in Star Wars issue number 41. And at present, this book at a 9.8 has an FMV of $160, which is pretty low considering all of the excitement that is out there right now associated with Star Wars. And then when you also consider that it's Yoda's cameo appearance, $160 is not a bad price. The next book that our blogger talks about is associated with a legend, a legendary creator by the name of Jack King Kirby. And again, this is an undervalued, maybe even underappreciated book. The book in question is Commandy, the Last Boy on Earth, issue number 1. And this book at a 9.8 has a fair market value of around $500. And the blogger actually points out that there are less than 1,000 copies of this book on the census. Now, what's interesting is that I have had this book in my collection for more than a year and a half. I've never actually read the book, and I am a Jack Kirby fan, which is why I bought the book. I just never read it. I read it today. It's actually a pretty good read, and I've read a lot of Jack Kirby's work that he has written, and a lot of times if you've read his work, it starts off a little rocky as you read his writing, but gets progressively better. This one from issue number 1, in my opinion, is probably some of the best writing that I have actually seen from Jack Kirby. It is a great story. I was entertained. The artwork, you already know, was really fantastic. So if you have any interest in the cameo appearance of Yoda, or even an undervalued and maybe even underappreciated book key from the King, this is a blog post that you want to check out. So I have a question for you. What book is the king of the Copper Age? Put another way, what book has performed incredibly well that is from the Copper Age? If you guessed Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300, you would be correct. This book has done incredibly well over the last year or so. And our next blogger does a really fantastic job of highlighting why this book is the king of the Copper Age. The blogger says that this book is the king of the Copper Age because it has a lot going for itself. Specifically, this is the first full appearance of Venom, the first issue inked by Todd McFarlane, and is also Spider-Man's 25th anniversary. But that honestly is only part of the story. This book is selling incredibly well as well. In the first part of the year, on 1/4/2020, this book at a 9.8 sold for $2,049. Fast forward 6 months, that same book sold for more than $4,000. And in fact, when you dig into some of the sales data, what you see is that at a 9.8, this book has a 1-year return of 43% at a 9.8. At a 6.5, it has a 48% return, and at a 4.5, it has a 25% return. Put another way, this book is incredibly hot and shows no signs of slowing down. I know that there are a lot of folks out there that love Venom and want this book and are waiting for this book to cool off to be able to jump into those waters. It's tough. It really is tough when you see performance numbers like what we are seeing in this blog post. I honestly don't have any recommendations. If you have this book, you may want to hold on to it. You may want to cash out depending upon your situation. If you don't have this book and you want to pick it up, it's tough just because the king is sitting on the throne and doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another episode, and as I promised, there was a little something for everyone in this one. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button and to leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. And if you truly enjoyed yourself, I want to invite you to come back next week when we get to do this all over again.